Hello, I'm Nora, and welcome back to Novels with Nora. Today is my May wrap-up, and I imagine this video will actually be quite short, given that you've already heard me talk about pretty much all of these books. Most of the books I'm going to be talking about, I read in my 24-hour reading vlog, and because I read 5.5-ish books in that video, and that's pretty much what I read this month. So if you've seen that video, you've heard my thoughts on most of these, but I will give like a brief wrap up of them and then share some of the other books I've read this month that you haven't heard me talk about, as well as some stats at the end. So let's just get started. The first 3 books that I read this month I don't have anymore because I had to return them to the library. So the first book that I read this month was The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim, and I absolutely loved this book. In this, we follow our main character, and she is living with her mom and her sister, and their dad has just left them abruptly, and it causes her mom to kind of spiral and end up getting this awful boyfriend, and he very much like fetishizes Asian women and is like just a horrible, terrible person. And she starts kind of like daydreaming about eating his eyeballs, because in their culture eating like fish eyes is good luck, and her mom encourages them to eat the fish eyes, and she wants to eat them to like bring good luck back into her life after her husband left her. And this was pitched as like the making of a serial killer in a feminist psychological horror, and yes, that is very much what it was. I absolutely loved this. I loved seeing Ji-won, our main character, just like realize that like the men in her life were horrible, and like she doesn't need to rely on them. She's got herself. She can take care of herself, her mom and her sister. Like she's got this. And she really did become a serial killer, and like she ate it up, both being a serial killer and the eyeballs that she was eating. So I really enjoyed that, and I gave that 4 out of 5 stars, mainly because it was the author's debut novel, and there were just some things where I even mentioned, because I read this in my Buzzwordathon vlog, and there were some things with the writing that it just felt a little out of character. Like our evil, nasty boyfriend guy, he used the word irate, and I was like, this man is so awful and like so uneducated that like he would not know this word, but he used it, and so it just felt a little out of place. So it was just like little things like that that took it down to the 4-star for me. But after that, in the same vlog, I read The Ornithologist Field Guide to Love by India Holton, and this was really fun. It follows our main character Beth as she is an ornithologist. However, all of the birds that they study in like this world are like magical, mystical birds. They're not real birds. And fun fact about me, I used to want to be an ornithologist before I decided I wanted to be a librarian, and I'm still like really interested in ornithology. I love like bird watching and everything, so I was really looking forward to this. And unfortunately, it just kind of fell a little flat for me, because we follow Beth and her love interest Devin as they go on this like hunt for this like mysterious bird that is going to win them like this Birder of the Year competition. But then like things get thwarted. They're like clearly being set up for something. They're falling in love all the while, and it was like very cutesy. It just felt very repetitive in the middle, because it kept being like them having to like go find this bird, but then like something would get thrown in their way, they'd have to deal with that and then like continue on. Which, if that's what you're into, you want like a nice cozy little like romantic mystery with some fun shenanigans, then this is perfect for you. It just, to me, it felt very repetitive in the middle. Like it was fun and I enjoyed it, but it was kind of to the point where I started to be like, okay, let's maybe get to the next point. So this got a 3.5 out of 5 for me, which is still a very good rating, and I am curious to see what comes next in this like interconnected standalone series. I think it's like the Geographer's Map of Romance or something like that. I don't know, but I'm interested to possibly pick that one up, because I did really enjoy the writing. It was like very fun. It just wasn't exactly for me, but I am interested in continuing on. And then after that, I think I had my biggest disappointment of the month with Cold Eternity by S.A. Barnes. If you have heard me talk about S.A. Barnes before, you know that her first novel, Dead Silence, is one of my favorite books of all time. I absolutely love that. And then her second book, Ghost Station, I thought was just okay and was kind of a big letdown for me. So when it came to Cold Eternity, I was hesitant to pick it up, because it's like I knew I wanted to read it, but I also did not want to get my hopes up because of what had happened with Ghost Station. So I got it from the library, and I'm glad I did, because it did not work for me. This was the first book that I read for the 24-hour reading vlog, and I finished like the last 90 pages there, so you heard a little bit of my thoughts if you've seen that video. But this follows our main character as she's running from something in her past, and we don't know what it is at first, but we know it has something to do with like a governmental scandal, and she's like running from that, and she ends up taking this job that's like very off the books, off the record. We're not telling anyone that this is happening, and she gets sent to this ship, Elsie and Fields, that had been used in the past as this like hospital type ship where people could go to, like, if they were dying and there wasn't technology to save them, they could get like cryogenically frozen and stay here until the technology to save them came about, and then they would get like woken up and saved. Well, the technology never really came about, and like the cryo freezing never really worked out, so it got turned into a museum where people could go and like see what was going on there and like see all of the other inventions by the guy who started this ship. And then she ends up going there as like the caretaker of the ship. She just like walks around and like makes sure that everything's in place. But then things start getting creepy. However, they weren't like creepy enough for me. Really, that's all I can tell you about the plot without spoiling things, because that is the plot. It's just her on the ship, making sure that things are as they should be, and then things are not as they should be. But the way that the author chose to make everything come together was like, what? Now, why did we do that? Because this was pitched as like, I'm not even sure what exactly the mission with this book was, right? Because it had a lot of like politics in it, which is like totally fine, but that was not at all included in the synopsis or like any marketing for this book. And that became like the main plot point. Like the horror and everything that was going on the ship was like secondary to like the political drama that was unfolding. And so that was just like a little bit disappointing. And also then the ending was like, really? I sat through this whole book to get here? So it was just like a little like, what are we doing? And also our main character, I didn't like her. And it's really hard to read a book where you're only following one character because she's in this isolated environment. So we're only getting her and her thoughts and like her backstory as she's thinking about it, and you don't like her. So it made this reading experience less than enjoyable for me. So this one got a 3 out of 5 stars. And because like parts of it, like the writing was good. And this is what like irks me so much about S.A. Barnes, is her writing is really good. The way she describes these different like spaceships and things is really fantastic. And like there's so much potential there. Like Dead Silence is one of the best books in like the space horror genre, in my opinion, that I've read. But her subsequent books have just been letdowns. So I'm really curious to see what she writes next and where we go from there, and if I'm even interested in picking up what comes next, because nothing has been able to do what Dead Silence has done for me. And I'm also kind of interested in rereading Dead Silence and seeing if it like holds up, but I'm afraid that it won't, so I don't really want to do that. But that was Cold Eternity. After that, we really got into our 24-hour reading vlog, so I'll probably go a little bit quicker through these. But the first thing I read for that was The Center by Aisha Manazir Siddiqui, and I loved this. This was so fantastic. All you need to know about this is we follow our main character, Anissa, as she is dating this man, Adam. Boo, we don't like Adam. I don't like Adam. And he is like really proficient in learning languages and then being able to speak those languages. As she gets to know him and as she like tries to like bring him further into her life, he reveals to her that the way that he's able to learn all of these languages and be so proficient in them is because he goes to this place called The Center, where you pay $20,000 and you're isolated for 10 days, and when you come out knowing like you're proficient in a language, like almost like you're a native speaker of that language. So she decides to go because her dream is to be like an amazing, great, world-renowned translator. And right now all she's doing is like subtitling Bollywood films, which like she enjoys doing, but it's not what she wants to be doing with her life. So she goes to learn German so that she can be a translator and do great things. But while she's there, she starts to get close to one of the women who like runs the center, and she starts to uncover what actually is happening here. And it is just so fabulous and so amazing. And I learned a lot about translation and what it takes to be a translator. And this was just so fantastic and like came out of left field for me, because I expected to enjoy it, but I didn't expect to absolutely love it the way that I did. And the way that this ended had me rethinking the entire book. And I love when books do that, because it wasn't to the point where I was like, I feel like I need to reread to like recontextualize everything, but it finished and I was like, oh my God, like it just makes you like like everything just clicks. This was so fantastic. This was a 5-star for me. Like I even still think about this book and I'm just like, wow, like that was a ride, and I really, really liked this. So this was a 5-star. After that, I picked up yet another successful novel, and that was Lucy Undying by Kirsten White. And this is like a Dracula novel. It even says a Dracula novel. We follow 3.5 perspectives in here. First, we have Dracula, like a tiny little bit, like one chapter in the beginning and then a few more sprinkled throughout. And then we have our like main like plot carrier, Iris, who is again running away from something in her past, but this time we know what it is. Her mom kind of leads this like cult, and she's trying to get away from it because her mom has died under mysterious circumstances, and she is like running away, like trying to get away from the family business, but like there's so many things that she's tied up in that she like can't really get away from. So we're following her trying to escape. But then she meets this girl, Elle, and then our story kind of carries on from there. But then we also have two other perspectives. We have the diaries of Lucy Westenra in like the 1800s, and her just like hating her life, being a queer woman, but not understanding those feelings because that's like not accepted in her time, and then like all the bad things that happened to her. And then we're also getting these client transcripts from the year before Iris's time period, and it's Lucy, but like we're going through her life, and it's so wonderful. I loved how all of these perspectives like wove together to make such a beautiful story, and it has like kind of like a meandering narrative because we go through Lucy's entire life, because we're getting her diaries, but then we're also getting the client transcripts where she just like is telling her story after the events that like took place in her diary entries. And she's a vampire. I feel like, I don't know how I didn't mention that. This is a vampire novel. And so Lucy is a vampire. And so she's telling us her whole story of how she goes through so much time and meets all these people. And it's just so wonderful. And the vampire lore in here was crazy because Lucy, again, is a vampire, but she can like shapeshift into moonlight. So she can just like weave through everything. It's so wonderful. It is a little bit gory, but I really enjoyed this until we got to the end where we had like a weird pyramid scheme happening. Didn't love that. That's why it was a 4.5 for me instead of a full 5. But I actually really enjoyed this. This is my first book from Kirsten White, and I know she's written a lot of other things, and I really liked the writing. I don't think that this is for everyone because it is quite meandering, and the plot really, like, I don't want to say it gets silly, but it gets to the point where you're like, what? What? But I really enjoyed it. I had a very good time with this, and it is kind of long, which it's very meandering because we go through Lucy's entire life, but I really liked it. I had a very good time with this. After that, I moved on to A Dark and Drowning Tide by Alison Saft. And in this, we follow Lorelai and Sylvia. Lorelai is a folklorist and Sylvia is a naturalist. So Lorelai like takes down the like stories from people and like their different like folklore. And then Sylvia, she like, in this world, there is magic, and there are like all these little creatures because of the magic, and Sylvia is kind of responsible for like learning about them and learning how to connect with them and like interact with them. And they end up going on this like journey for this river that is like the source of all magic for the king. And while they're on this journey, their mentor, who is leading the expedition, ends up getting murdered, and they're all like trapped on this boat as they're going on this journey. And so they have to figure out who did it and like why the king really wants this magic and what's going to happen if he gets it. And these two obviously fall in love. It's a slow burn, enemies to lovers. I had a good time with it. I didn't love the characters and I didn't love the plot, but the world building and the writing was absolutely stunning, and that's what carried me through it. So I am interested in reading more from Alison Saft. She is who wrote Wings of Starlight, the Tinkerbell book that I read. Really love that, and I really like her writing. This story and the plot didn't really do it for me, but the world building and the writing was fantastic. This got a 3.5 for me simply because of like the writing and the world building, but the characters and the plot, the characters really went from like absolutely hating each other to being like, I can't live without you, like you are my everything, I don't know how to breathe when you're not around me. And it just was like a switch that fast, and I was like, I don't love that. So 3.5. I am interested in reading more from her because this writing was so like encompassing and so magical and whimsical that I really liked it. And also I noticed, and I even said this in my 24-hour reading vlog, that Sylvia and Lucy from Lucy Undying feel very similar. They're both like whimsical characters who like seem naive from the outside, but are really just like, they've been through a lot and have just somehow managed to cling to like their hope and their whimsy. And I really like that about them. So those are my thoughts on that one. Then I picked up another 5-star read. This was a really great reading month for me. The Unworthy by Augustina Bazterrica, translated by Sarah Moses. And when I tell you that I was blown away by this novel, I had read Tenders the Flesh from the same author translator duo and thought it was just okay. I think I gave it like a 3-star. I thought it was fine. Like I didn't love it, didn't hate it. It just kind of like didn't really do anything for me. So I picked this up mainly because I wasn't originally going to pick it up, but then I had seen an interview with the author talking about how, like, I don't even remember exactly what she said, but I remember her talking about like Catholic or like religious school and then like religious trauma. And I was like, I grew up in Catholic school. Let me pick this one up. And it worked for me so perfectly. This is a very short novella, so I don't want to say too much about it, but we follow our main character and like the entire book is told in like her journaling entries pretty much. And we follow her as she's in this like convent pretty much, and she is one of the unworthy, and this world is set so that it's like an apocalypse happened. Like the world is like completely ravaged, and the only sanctuary that these girls know is inside of this like religious sect, and so they think everything on the outside is like decimated. Like this, where they are right now, is like their only hope. This is all they have, and the people in charge of this religion really like prey on them for that, because they like punish them really incredibly physically for like the smallest things. They are encouraged to like turn on each other and be like constantly surveilling each other. And I really love this. And we end up following our main character again with her journal entries as she's telling us about some of her life before she came to this religious order, and also as an outsider ends up finding her way in, and like their relationship. This was sapphic, and I didn't realize that it was, but I was really excited about it because it really showed like the deconstruction of religion through a sapphic lens, and I absolutely loved it. This is not for everyone, absolutely not, but it really worked for me, I think, because it touched on a lot of the things that I have a problem with in religion and the things that like I struggle to connect with in religion. This just like felt like it was written for me. And I even said in my review, I was like, this is written for all the girls who like grew up in a religious school setting when they were too young to fully understand what was going on, but like knew that they had questions, but were then punished for asking those questions. This, I feel like, just, it was that. This was so beautiful to me, and it just like, I can't say enough good things, and I feel like I cannot be articulate enough about how much I loved this. So yeah, this just worked for me so well. And just like the conversations in here, and it's not even conversations, it's like you see this character start to come to terms with where she is maybe isn't as good as she has been led to believe it is, which is like how a lot of religions work. So this just really, really worked for me. And I know that it won't for everyone, but it did for me. And that's why it got a 5-star. And I cannot wait to buy my own copy of this and annotate it crazily because I loved this. There's so many things in here that I loved so much. And I want to reread it. Like every time I look at it, I'm like, I'm itching for it again because it was so good. After that, I picked up a book that I probably should have left for someone else, and that is Exquisite Ruin by Adrienne May. This is the same author as two of my favorite YA novels, In the Ravenous Dark and A Court of the Undying Seasons. Absolutely love both of those. They're like YA fantasy sci-fi, and this is her first foray into like adult fantasy romance. And the only reason I picked this up was because of the author. I didn't really know what it was about. I was like, oh, like I want to support this author, so let me pick this up. I should have looked more into it. I knew that it was like a retelling of the Minotaur myth and it was romance, but like there's romance in the other two of her books, and I was like, oh, it'll be fine. I did not know what I was getting myself into. This is like explicit adult romance, so if that's not for you, this will not be for you, and it was not for me. I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars simply because I love this author's writing, but the plot itself, I was like, no. If you're into dark romance, I think you might actually like this because there is like a good amount of plot and romance. Like you can't really separate the two. It's very much like fantasy romance, but the writing was really fantastic. It's just, I really did not know what I was getting myself into. And when I opened it up and found this giant paragraph of content warnings, I said, oh, maybe I should have done more research into this one. So like, I'm glad to have read it. It's not sticking with me. Like, it's not something that I'm like, yes, I'm so glad to have read this. It's like, it's something that I read, you know? I got a little out of my comfort zone with it, but 3 stars for me. Probably, this is in a series, and I'm curious to see where she goes with the next ones in the series because it ends where like it feels like a good ending, like it's not a cliffhanger or anything. So I'm curious to see what happens next, but I don't know that I'm gonna pick them up just because this was a lot for me. Okay, I have not read anything quite as graphically sexual as this. And I will say though, the sex scenes all contributed to the plot. It wasn't just like sex for the sake of them having sex. It all made sense with the plot. That's what I'll say about this. Our final book of this month was Victorian Psycho by Virginia Fato, and this is something that I was so excited to pick up. I remember seeing it at Barnes & Noble and then regretting not buying it, so I was really excited when my hold came in through the library, and it let me down. It did. I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5. I really liked the writing. The writing in here was very good. This takes place during like the Victorian era, and the writing felt very of that era. It felt very Victorian. However, the plot was very much just this. Let me tell you what this is about before we get started. This follows our main character, Winifred Noddy, as she becomes the governess for this family. And it's like very clear that she does not like them and plans on doing very terrible things to them. And so we just kind of follow her as she like hates this family and is kind of like tearing them apart from the inside and then also like murdering people. And you know, I support women's rights and women's wrongs. However, this I didn't love because it's like she was like murdering people and like doing baby swaps. And she was like so protected from the plot. Like nothing bad ever happened to her. Well, until the end. But it was just like she was like killing people and like baby swapping and like no one noticed. She never like, we were never, as the reader, I was never like fearing for her safety or for her position within this house. It was very much just like she was going about doing whatever freak things she wanted to do and there were no consequences for her actions until like the very end. And even then I was like, and this is like a very short book, so to feel like that the whole way through, I was like, what are we doing? I considered DNFing it several times, but I really enjoyed the writing and I wanted to see how it was going to wrap up. However, it didn't really do it for me. And I can see why people would enjoy this because it was fun, I will say that, seeing this woman just do these crazy things to this family, but I wish she had faced more consequences so that I felt more like engaged with the story, because it really just felt like reading it and just like going through the motions of reading, and I never felt really absorbed in the story because I never was afraid for our character. And I guess that's kind of the point, because like she's an awful person, right? But still, she's our main character. I feel like I should be connected to her in some capacity, but it was just like she was doing all these awful things and then just like going about her life. And I was like, I feel like even if just like we had an instance of like someone catching on and her killing that person, just like something to show that someone in this house is paying attention. And that's kind of the point with this. I think the point that the author was trying to make is that the rich people who like employ everyone, including Winifred, they do not pay attention to what like the people working under them do, because they're so far beneath them is how they see it, that they just like do not pay attention to what they're doing. And I think that's kind of what was being pointed at here. But like there's other like workers in this house and like no one is noticing that anything's awry. Like they say multiple times that like they don't like her, but I'm like, well, let's take that a step further. Why don't you like her? You know, so it was just a little like, I needed more. And the author didn't want to give me more, which is fine, but this ended up being a 3-star for me. And those are the 9 books that I read this month. So now I am going to share some statistics with you, because you know I love my little reading statistics. Okay, so like I said, in May I read 9 books, which was a total of 2,741 pages, which makes sense because Lucy Undying was like a 450-page novel, but then 2 of the books were novellas, so a bit shorter. My most read genre was horror, and I read 5 books physically and then 4 books physically with the audiobook. And then unfortunately all 9, well, not unfortunately, but all 9 of the books were from the library, so I did not read any of my owned books this month because I had so many things out from the library that everything I read was not something that I owned, which, you know, I'm actually okay with. So all 9 were from the library, and I had 2 5-stars, which is always exciting, 1 4.5 star, 1 4-star, 2 3.5 stars, and then 2 3-stars. So I feel like while I didn't have a super great reading month because a lot of things were mediocre, I also had 2 5-stars and a 4.5 star. So to me, that kind of evens out and makes it fantastic for me. And then as for my reading challenges this month, I did do Buzzwordathon. I posted a whole vlog for it, but I read The Eyes Are the Best Part for Eyes on the Cover, and then The Ornithologist Field Guide to Love for 2 in the title. So it was a very successful reading month. I will say Victorian Psycho did kind of put me in a little bit of a slump, so that I have not read at all the last week of May, but I read 9 books this month, which is still really good. And that means that I have read 42 books, and my goal for the entire year is 45, and we're not even halfway through the year yet. So I would say that I am doing very well with my reading goals, and I'm reading a lot of things that I'm like really interested in. And even if they're not like fully working for me, I'm still like glad to have read them, you know? So another great reading month. I'm really excited to see what June has in store, especially because the weather's starting to get warmer. I can start reading outside, so expect to see that in some of my vlogs, hopefully. I have a lot of really fun vlogs planned that I hope you'll stick around to watch, but that is the end of my reading wrap up. I really did have a very good time this month. If I had to pick a favorite book of this month, I'm sure to no one's surprise, it would be The Unworthy. Yeah, it just really worked for me, and it like lives inside of me now. So that's my favorite book of the month. So that is all I have to share with you today, but I hope that you'll stick around to see some of my other videos. Maybe watch that 24-hour reading vlog if you want to know more about my thoughts on some of these and actually see me reading them. But this is where I'm going to leave you. Again, I hope to see you in a future video. I hope that you will like, comment, and subscribe, and do all the things. And again, I hope to see you in another video soon. Bye!